All right, so this week we're going to be discussing the Theban saga, which is, and for all intents and purposes, the story of Oedipus and his family. But we're going to not only discuss that, but we will sort of be discussing the founding of Thebes, and then sort of the um, the ruling family before Oedipus, and then what happens after, sort of ending with the final death of himself and his family. So we're going to begin just by looking at Thebes itself. So where is the city of Thebes? We haven't done a lot with geography, but the city of Thebes is located right here in Boeotia. Athens is down here in Attica. Corinth, which is another city we'll be dealing with, is here at this isthmus where we move from, we move basically into the Peloponnese from Aetolia. We also have Delphi, which is over here. The primary three cities we'll sort of be dealing with in this tale are Delphi, Thebes, and Corinth. And they sort of create this little triangle here. Some other notable cities, of course, are the city of Sparta, Olympia over here, Ithaca. If I'm remembering right, Ithaca is this little island right here. Of course, we have Crete down here, and your Aegean Sea here. So the predominant cities we're going to be discussing are Corinth, Thebes, and Delphi. So we're going to go back to a story from earlier this semester, which is the story of Europa. If we remember, Europa is one of these women that Zeus just sees, and she's so pretty that he decides to abduct her from her family, which was in Tyre, which is in modern day Lebanon, there on the far eastern side of the Mediterranean. If we remember that Zeus turns himself into a bull, she sees the bull and how beautiful the bull is. She climbs onto his back and he flies away. The bull flies away to Crete, where he is able to sleep with Europa. It's there that she becomes the queen of the island and the mother of King Minos. We will discuss that a little bit more when we talk about Theseus, and we're going to talk about Minos, King Minos, not to be confused with Midas, King Minos's family and their obsession with bulls and sort of the trouble that is going to get them into. What's interesting, and this is something that we see a lot more because sort of, I mean, what we're sort of going to be building up to is what the Greeks see, and this is what we sort of, when we talk about with Herodotus, or not Herodotus, yeah, with Hesiod, when he talks about the ages of man, right? We see this, basically all of these things that happened in the past and the very real and cognizant present matching up with one another. And so the Greeks sort of have to deal with this. What we have, and I put this Herodotus up here because Herodotus at the beginning of his work, The Histories, does a lot to sort of challenge the myths and sort of put them in the real world perspective. So speaking of this, he says Herodotus doesn't see, so we're talking about Europa, this is an abduction by Zeus, but it's a raid by the Greeks, which is part of this early cycle of women stealing between Greece and Asia. And this is from Herodotus 1:2 says, this say the Persians, not the Greeks, was how Io came to Egypt, as according to them was the first wrong that was done. Next, according to their certain Greeks, landed on Tyre and took off Europa. Those Greeks must have been Cretans. So far, then the account between them stood a mountain. So basically, this idea that the Greeks and the Persians just keep stealing women from one another, and this, of course, builds up to the Trojans taking Helen and the Trojan War taking place. So Herodotus sees it as the cycle back and forth that eventually leads up to large scale war in the Trojan War. So again, history meets myth. To continue on with the story, Europa has a brother whose name is Cadmus. Cadmus basically sets out in the world to find her. And if you're looking for someone, or looking for something, or looking for the answer to something, you of course go to Delphi. He goes to Delphi and is told not to worry about Europa. She's fine, but you need to go found a city. He's told that you're going to basically you're going to leave here, you're going to see a cow, you're going to follow it until it stops and lays down. There is where you were to found a city. So the cow actually leads him to Boeotia. And of course, Boeotia has roots to cows. We get like bovine, of course. But he founds the Cadmea. When he arrives at his location, he is ordered to sacrifice the bull that he follows. He does that, but in order to commit the sacrifice, he needs water. He goes and finds a spring, which is a sacred spring of the god Ares, which is guarded by a large serpent. And we didn't really get into Apollo and the serpent, but of course, Apollo, one of his names, the Pythia, comes from a story of Apollo slaying a dragon in the area, and sort of when he comes to the area to get their patronage. And so here again, we have this a similar thing where we have a serpent being slain to found the city. Cadmus kills the serpent and is told he has to bury the serpent's teeth. If we remember, we have this sowing of serpent's teeth in the story of Jason. So if we can guess what's going to happen, of course, from those teeth buried in the ground, people are going to pop up. These are people known as the Spartoi. And these become these men sown from these teeth. So again, we're dealing with the idea of autochthony, become the founders of the royal families of Thebes. So essentially what this is in the history, these predominant families would be able to trace themselves back to the earliest founding of the city, claiming to be descendants of these Spartoi. Because of the slaying of Ares's serpent, Cadmus is forced to be Ares's slave for one whole year. It's during this year that Cadmus falls in love with, is during this year of service that Cadmus meets and falls in love with Harmonia, who is the daughter of Ares and Aphrodite. Is actually Harmonia, yeah. So it sorry. So yeah. So it's at their wedding. This wedding is attended. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. So Cadmus meets her, falls in love with her during this time of servitude. They get married, and they have this wedding, and this is something we're going to see. We sort of have these, like, I mean, of course, Harmonia is a goddess married to a god. It's interesting, or I'm sorry, Cadmus is not a god, of course. We have a goddess married to just a mortal man. It's sort of similar to what we're going to see with the marriage of Peleus and Aphrodite later, which is what sort of it's their wedding that is the sort of the start of the discord that becomes the Trojan War. But they receive, and I should just mention the gifts they receive, or a robe or a necklace. I don't really, just off the top of my head, just important to know. And basically, Cadmus and Harmonia are said to have introduced writing to the Greeks. This, of course, is likely a myth recounting just how writing came to the Greeks from the East, which most things, I should mention, a lot of things come to the Greeks from the East. Cadmus and Harmonia, of course, have 4 daughters: Ino, Semele, Autone, and Agawe. And it's actually at the end of Cadmus and Harmonia's life, they are turned into serpents. So we've actually seen Cadmus, of course, before. If we remember, Cadmus's daughter Semele is the mother of Dionysus. So Cadmus is, of course, a grandfather, or is the grandfather of Dionysus. So Cadmus, with his 4 daughters, and basically, let's sort of look at what happens to the generations. Cadmus. So we've met Pentheus, who, of course, is made king as Cadmus is an old man, and he, in an attempt to see the Maenads frolicking in the fields, is ripped limb from limb by his mother. We have Labdacus, who is also killed because he rejects Dionysus as a god. He has a son named Laius, who we will get to later. We have Lycus, who's the son of Chthonius, who's one of the Spartoi. He basically becomes the sort of takes over this regency after Labdacus is killed and makes himself king. We have Amphion and Zethus, who are both sons of Antiope. They overcome Lycus. They exile Laius, who is just still a boy, and they build the defensive walls. So notice what we're seeing here. So after basically Dionysus sort of does his damage in the city of Thebes, we just have like just lots of turmoil within the city. This turnover over and over of kings in the city, and this is going to continue on, of course, with Oedipus's family. We're going to get into that. So it's Amphion and Zethus who build the defensive walls of Thebes, which we're going to talk about those a little bit. Amphion marries Niobe, who, of course, we have met already. If we remember Niobe, the woman who claimed to have more beautiful children, because she had 7 sons and 7 daughters than Leto, and of course then the archer god and goddess Apollo and Artemis rained arrows down and killed all of her children. Zethus marries Thebe, and it is after her that the city of Thebes is named. So before it was the Cadmea, now the city of Thebes. So we come back to Laius, who is the infant son of Labdacus. In exile, he is received as a guest host of Pelops, and we'll talk about Pelops later, of course, also. There, he abducts Chrysippus, who is the son of Pelops. Here, Chrysippus commits suicide after this abduction and rape by Laius, and Pelops curses Laius and all of his son and all of his descendants. He curses them. And what is that curse? The curse, the ramifications of that curse, of course, should be not unfamiliar to you. But Laius, going to Apollo, of course, is told what this curse is. He's told that his first son will kill him and will marry his wife, Jocasta. So at first, Laius and Jocasta, of course, do what they must, and they abstain from having kids or abstain from any act that might bring about children. But of course, one night, after having one too many to drink, both Laius and Jocasta throw caution to the wind, and of course, Jocasta gets pregnant. Not really knowing what to do, and fearing that this child will kill him and marry Jocasta. Of course, something Jocasta doesn't want. They decide that they will give the child to, and I should mention, not do it themselves, but they will give the child to a shepherd to take him out where he will be exposed on Mount Kithaeron. This child name, of course, is Oedipus, which literally means swollen foot. So why does he have swollen feet? And actually, we'll sort of talk about that because I think it's interesting. I found the statue. This is not an ancient statue. This is a Renaissance statue we have baby Oedipus here with his feet bound together. And essentially what they did to expose the baby Oedipus is they literally pierced the backs of his feet and tied his feet together so he would not be able to crawl or to walk. So we have the servant of the royal family give this baby to a shepherd from Corinth. And this shepherd brings the little baby Oedipus to Corinth, where he is raised as the prince of Corinth by Polynices and Merope. So now we have an extraordinary tale of survival, the removal from the community, but survival nonetheless. In Corinth, this is not a great map. This looked a lot better when it was a smaller slide, but that's okay. Oedipus comes to age in the city of Corinth. And his life there is actually not bad. Seemingly, Oedipus has escaped the curse against his father and against his family. But one night at a dinner party, someone lets slip that Oedipus is a bastard and not the true son of Polynices and Merope. This causes Oedipus to, of course, go to the one place where you need to go if you want to find truth. He runs away from Corinth, and there he goes to Delphi. In Delphi, he asks if it's true. Of course, in Delphi, you never really get a straight answer. And so he's not told yes or no. All he is told is that he will kill his father and marry his mother. This is all he's told. So at this point, he believes that Merope and Polybus are still his parents. And so what does he do? He decides he can't go back to the city of Corinth. It's the last place he can be, because he doesn't want to kill his father or marry his mother. So what is Odysseus doing here? And this is something that Sophocles discusses, but we see this come up time and time again, till even in many of today's folk, and we see this in folktale all over the place. When you are fated to do something, there's no escaping one's fate. There's no escaping one's fate. Oedipus does here what he thinks he has to do to escape this fate. And he doesn't want to kill his father. He doesn't want to marry his mother. He has no reason to hate Polybus and Merope. And so he does what any logical person would do. He decides not to go home. So we're going to put a pin in that for right now. We're going to leave Oedipus in Delphi, having made the decision to not go home. In the city of Thebes, the Sphinx is plaguing the city. And the Sphinx, of course, is basically creating a plague in the land. So crops aren't growing, people are getting sick, people are dying for unknown reasons, things like that. The Sphinx is sent by Hera. And essentially it's preventing any any, like I said, any sort of crops to grow, and it's killing people throughout the city. So we have, Laius, who is the king, naturally goes to Delphi to find out what the cure for this plague is. But he never makes it to Delphi and never returns to the city of Thebes. So we have Oedipus, oh my goodness, Oedipus now leaving the city of Delphi, and Laius heading toward the city of Delphi. There on the road, lonely Oedipus is walking. Laius refuses basically to get out of the way and pushes Oedipus off of the road, which makes Oedipus upset, and he kills everyone except one person. Now, we could get into the silliness of, if you're prophesied that you're going to kill someone and you want to avoid that fate, the logical thing would be never to kill anyone. But of course, that's not what happens. He kills Laius and all of these men. That one person returns to Thebes and tells everyone that their party was attacked by a group of men. Although it was just one. If you've ever read Oedipus Rex, Oedipus the King, you would know that it's on this lie that the entire story hinges on. Oedipus convinces himself that it can't be him who killed Laius, and we'll get, actually, I don't want to jump too far ahead. Let's not jump the shark there. But just know that this lie is important, and it's sort of the linchpin that the play is based off of. Oedipus naturally heading toward Thebes, hears that the king Creon, or the regent Creon, is offering his sister Jocasta and the kingdom to whoever can come solve the riddle of the Sphinx. Oedipus believes that he can, and so he comes to the city and takes the challenge of the Sphinx. He's told that he has to answer a riddle. The riddle being what walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet in the afternoon, and 3 feet in the evening. He answers that correctly, and I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. I'm sure you know, but if you don't, I want you to think about it. So he answers the riddle correctly. The Sphinx goes away, and he is made king of the city of Thebes. He, of course, marries the queen, Jocasta, who is sisters with Creon, and they have 4 children: Polynices, Eteocles, Antigone, and Ismene. It's during the reign of Oedipus that another plague comes to Thebes. Poor Thebes, plague after plague after plague. Oedipus, of course, doesn't leave himself, but sends his brother-in-law, Creon, to Delphi to ask what needs to be done to cure this plague. And I say here, this is actually, it's with Creon's return is where Sophocles' is the Oedipus Tyrannus, Oedipus the king, Oedipus Rex begins. We find out that it is because Laius's murder is in the city that there is a plague inside of the city. So Oedipus, being the sleuth, the great sleuth that he is going to figure it out and decrees that whoever it is has to be exiled. Oedipus, through a series of inquiries, finds out that he is the son of Laius and Jocasta. So if you remember the lie at the crossroads, that there were multiple attackers. So essentially what happens in the course of the play, if you've never read it, a messenger from Corinth arrives telling him that Oedipus can return to Corinth because Polynices has died. Essentially, the prophecy that Oedipus will kill his father can't take place. Oedipus is essentially relieved. What eventually becomes revealed, because the person who happens to bring that message is one and the same shepherd who gave Oedipus to Polynices and Merope, also reveals that he was in fact the son of so it's the shepherd who brings him the news. Then they summon the household servant of Laius and Jocasta, who is the one who was supposed to expose Oedipus, who also happened to be the only survivor of the Battle of the Crossroads. And you come to find out that he has lied about the number of people who attacked him on the crossroads, and that it was one. Jocasta realizes this much earlier than Oedipus does inside of the play. And over again tells him to leave it alone, to not worry about it, to let it be, but he can't. Again, we've talked about the idea of, I've mentioned the idea of fate. One of the main themes of this is your fate is unavoidable. No matter what Oedipus did, everything he did brought about his fate. Everything he did that he thought would prevent this terrible fate that he was prophesied to have, everything he did were the only events that brought about his fate. When you fight it, it only brings it about. Of course, famously, Jocasta hangs herself, and Oedipus blinds himself and accepts exile. A later play about Oedipus by Sophocles, and this is actually the last play he writes, sort of calls into question if Oedipus is to blame. What do we have here? So in Oedipus at Clonus, so what help comes from fame or from a fine reputation that flows away in vain? Seeing that Athens, they say, has most reverence of the gods and alone can protect the afflicted strangers and alone can give him aid. How is this the case with me when you have made me rise up from these ledges and are driving me away simply from fear of my name? For it is not my person or my actions that you fear. Why know that my actions consisted in suffering rather than in doing? If I must speak of the matter of my mother and my father, on account of which you are afraid of me. This I know for sure. Yet in my nature, how am I evil? I who struck back when I had been struck, so that if I had acted knowingly, not even then would I have been evil. But as it is, I got to where I came to in all ignorance. But those who have ill used me knowingly, destroyed me. So led by his daughters, or just his daughter Antigone, upon his exile, so he's exiled from Thebes, and he is led to Colonus, the city of Colonus. There, and it's actually at the end of Oedipus at Colonus that Oedipus finally sees his difficult life journey come to an end. And he's finally vindicated. Thus, cling closely to each other, all of them sobbed. And these are all the people of Colonus. But when they came to the end of their lamenting, and no sound still rose up, there was silence. And suddenly the voice of someone hailed them, so that the hair of all stood upright suddenly in terror. For the god called them often and from many places. You there, Oedipus, why do we wait to go? You have delayed too long. Oedipus, and of course the apotheosis means, Oedipus is taken from the earth and taken up by the gods to Olympus for all of the things that he endured. Oedipus of Colonus is a great play. Actually, I'm going to post, or I have posted a revival version of Oedipus of Colonus called The Gospel of Colonus with Morgan Freeman. If you get a chance, I highly recommend you watch it. Before he dies, Oedipus, so his sons come to him before his apotheosis and are basically trying to get him to come back to Corinth or to Thebes to legitimize each of them as king. Because they're, of course, fighting over who gets to be king. He curses them both 3 times. So again, cursing the children here. Oedipus, already the antithesis of the curse against his father, now cursing his own sons. Polynices and Eteocles agree to alternate rule every year, but after the first year, he refuses to let Polynices have rule. Polynices goes to Argos, gets an army, and comes back to Thebes. Again, this is another play called this. There's a play about this, The Seven Against Thebes, where essentially the 7 gates of Thebes. There are 7 gates of Thebes. If that was unfamiliar to you, when the walls are built, there are 7 gates, and it's really great because they basically each hero is chosen in Thebes to guard a specific gate and to lead them in at that gate, and an attacker from Argos is chosen not only specifically to attack a certain gate, but to fight against a specific Theban hero and to lead that group. Of course, with Eteocles and Polynices going head to head against one another. The other name I have highlighted here, and this is the only one that I really think you need to remember, is Megarius, who is also the son of Creon. The battle rages, the civil war rages on for 7 captains posted against 7 gates. many against man, left from behind their brazen weapons. I won't read this out loud, but in the end, Eteocles and Polynices, in one-on-one combat, kill one another. The curse of the father on his sons. Creon, who is of course Jocasta's brother, who is married to Eurydice and has 3 children. So we're going to put a stopgap in that because now we're going to have a new ruler, Creon. He has 3 children, Megarius, who dies during the 7 against Thebes, Megara, who actually is Hercules' first wife, and then his son Haemon, who is engaged to Oedipus' daughter Antigone. After the death of Eteocles and Polynices, Creon becomes the king, and he decrees that no one is to bury the body of Polynices. Eteocles, of course, is given an honorable burial. Antigone, who is their sister, of course, defies him and buries Polynices anyway. This, of course, this is the plot for the Sophocles play Antigone, where, of course, she proclaims that it is her duty as a sister, as a member of the family, to bury the body of her brother. Which she does like 3 times. She is sentenced to death because of her defiance. Her death is that she'll be buried in a cave. Of course, with this body lying, Polynices' body lying there, Creon is made this foolish decision, and another plague has come to Thebes. They can't escape these plagues. The blind god Tiresias tells Creon that for this plague to be released, he first needs to bury the body of Polynices and release Antigone because she's been wrongfully sentenced to death. She's been told, and it's proper for her to bury her brother. Creon foolishly burns the body of Polynices first, and then decides to go let Antigone out of the cave. But he, of course, is too late. As he opens the cave, he finds his son Haemon has killed himself because Antigone is dead, ending Creon's male line. And now all of the males of this family are now dead. So why is this story important? Why do the Greeks tell this story? And there are so many themes packed into this. And what's important, and what I think that I want you to sort of come away from these stories, of course, is the idea of fate. The idea that one can't escape one's fate. And it's often the people who just accept that fate, because it's really not until Oedipus sort of just accepts his fate that we see him, that a good thing finally happens to him, and the gods generously let him die and basically go to heaven, if you will. But all of the men in this family refuse to accept this fate. They refuse to rule correctly. Creon, Laius, a bad king. Oedipus, a bad king. Creon, a bad king. This brings up issues of, and Antigone is actually a really great play. Again, not time because this is not a literature class. You haven't read these plays, but issues of in the Antigone, the gods versus the state, family versus like the state, all of these different things. And in the end, what happens when we push against our fate, when we do what we're not supposed to do as mortals, what happens? We're punished. Or at least this is what the Greeks thought. So I'm going to end there. I want you to sort of think about some of these things. And this week, instead of a quiz, I'm actually going to have you do a little forum post that I want to sort of be based off of what you read and the lecture here. And I want you to think about Oedipus and sort of the story of Oedipus and his family. And I'm going to come up with a question to sort of go along with that. So that's all I have. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will catch you next time.